The next thing he needs to understand is the absolute need to cooperate with our allies. No doubt about that. But I think two other quick points before turning it over to the others. There's absolute requirement to establish a lawful interrogation regime. There's an absolute need to articulate why we detain people in the future. This round up the usual suspects, guilt by association stuff works in Casablanca, doesn't work in real life. And when you do it in real life, you're stuck 7 years later with 25,000 people. And the last piece of the puzzle is really how do we go about trying all of these people? But it's absolutely essential that we define uniformly what is terrorism, what is counterterrorism, and that we understand the principal rule in counterterrorism is that terrorists have rights. And the moment we forget that terrorists have rights, I suggest, and this sounds dramatic, but I mean it. If we forget that terrorists have rights, we cannot look ourselves in the mirror at the end of the day. And so I would say to the President-elect, you must absolutely come forward to the American people and articulate these principles candidly, clearly, precisely, and concisely, not on the 21st of January. It's the first thing he's got to do once he takes care of the economy. And the 20th of January is to articulate these principles that people must absolutely understand that it is about power combined with, simultaneously combined with, the limits of power. If you forget that magical rule, he'll be where we are today.
Gabor, State of the Union speech. What should Barack Obama say? You want to answer this?
It's what he said.
Okay.
Plus. And the plus is that I think it's important to consider Guantanamo an anomaly and to consider the need to solve the Guantanamo problem quite apart from the problem of what to do with suspected terrorists going forward. In addition to the executive summary of this report out on the table, there are a couple of other human rights first documents that I put out there, and one of them is how to close Guantanamo. And in connection with the need to close Guantanamo, what we prescribe is that, first of all, there is a significant class of detainees who can and should simply be released. They are people who, however, may not be able to be sent back to their countries of origin because of the prohibitions of refoulement, that is, the prohibition of sending people to a country where they may be subjected to torture. That's one of our obligations under the Torture Convention to not do that. And so, to its credit, the administration has been, or parts of the administration have been working overtime to try to find countries in which to settle detainees that can be released, according to the administration. But one of the problems in trying to sell Guantanamo detainees to other countries is that the administration remains somewhat schizophrenic on the question of whether or not they're dangerous. And this came up in the case of the Chinese Uyghur detainees that you may have heard about, who the government has declared are not enemy combatants, and they can be released, but no country is willing to take them. Now, at the same time, in litigation, habeas litigation filed on behalf of and by these Uyghur detainees, the government the Justice Department is arguing to the judge, well, you can't let them go because they're dangerous. So how can the government ask other countries to take these detainees off our hands on the ground that they are no longer dangerous, while at the same time arguing in a court that they continue to be dangerous? I think the one thing that President Obama will be able to do to break this logjam, however, is to take some of the Guantanamo detainees into the U.S. for resettlement. I think by virtue of the fact that he is not George Bush, and by virtue of the fact that the United States sees the wisdom of taking some of these detainees onto its own soil, I think it will help break the logjam, and other states will start to take detainees. Now, in connection with those who are released. Some of them may be released to countries simply without any conditions, but others could conceivably be released back to their countries of origin or to other countries for appropriate legal proceedings. That's entirely within the realm of possibility as well. Now, as to those that the United States wants to continue to hold, they should be held because they are going to be subject to prosecution. And while there have been some serious impediments to prosecution in our Article III courts on account of the way in which evidence was obtained from some individuals, this is one of the prices that we're willing to pay if we live in a civilized nation. In addition, I think the entire complaint about the prospect of letting Khalid Sheikh Mohammed go because he was waterboarded is actually way out of line and overblown. Indeed, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was under indictment already in the United States for conduct that way predated 9/11 and could still be tried for that. So I think while the prospect of closing Guantanamo is complicated, there are some answers that are available. There are things that the U.S. can do to push and help its allies to resolve the Guantanamo problem, and there are certainly things that the U.S. can do to put the remaining detainees on trial in its federal courts for the detainees that it decides cannot or should not be released. But that's Guantanamo. Going forward, there is even less of a problem in bringing individuals who are suspected of terrorist acts before the criminal courts. The material support laws, other terrorism laws, have extraterritorial reach. There is no reason why the United States cannot protect its population, its interests, once it has identified individuals. There's no reason why the United States cannot protect its population and its interests by bringing those individuals to trial in front of its own federal criminal courts.